covers the Minnesota Vikings for the Star Tribune and StarTribune.com. Follow him at Twitter. It is at Ben Goessling because his Twitter feed's on fire, just like everybody else in this market who cares about the National Football League. And quite honestly, it is elite that Ben is joining us in studio. We thank you very much for that because we know how busy you are. If you constantly are looking at your phone and or texting while talking with us, it's completely permissible and understood. And if you are required to leave mid-segment to craft a doozy, zero problem from the Love Covenant. We love and respect you and your time. And just how about this morning, my brother? And good morning.
Good morning. Yeah, I went to bed. So we've kind of split up the on-call part of this week between Andrew Kramer, Emily Leiker, and myself, and I've got the night shift. Mm-hmm. So I went to bed at like 12:30 last night and then woke up to a text this morning that came in like a half hour after I went to bed that the Jonathan Allen thing was done. So yeah, it's been pretty nonstop. It's been pretty around the clock, but we thought they'd be aggressive. You know, this is the most money they've had to spend in a sheer dollar figure probably ever.
Yeah.
And some of that's relative, obviously, because the cap has gone up so much, but they have not had this ability to be this aggressive in a very long time. And they're taking advantage of their ability to do that. There's no question about it.
Let's begin with what's new. And part-year Vikings quarterback Daniel Jones.
Yep.
He's now a member of the Indianapolis. Well, he will be officially when the league year begins tomorrow.
Right. Officially
a member of the Indianapolis Colts. It's $14 million and change. Indy brings in competition for Anthony Richardson. Is the way Diana Rossini from The Athletic put it in her tweet that way. Brings in competition for Anthony. I agree with that.
Yep.
I don't think Anthony is an absolute century, just like, you know, with a Sharpie, put him in QB1. Would you agree?
I would. I mean, they benched him in the middle of last season, and that became that was the whole thing where he tapped out of the game for a play or two, and then they removed him from the starting lineup in part because of that, and I think just in part because he had struggled so much. So, we all saw the Kevin O'Connell moment last year where he, after that game, pulls Anthony Richardson aside and he's on the mic and tells him, hey, you're a baller. I want you to remember that. You know, these guys have your back, and kind of trying to encourage him because the Vikings were very interested in Anthony Richardson in the draft in 23. So, yeah, all this stuff kind of comes full circle. But, yes, I do think looking at it, the quarterback that they didn't draft in 23 is probably easier to beat out for Daniel Jones than the quarterback the Vikings did draft in 24. So he's looking at his options and saying, okay, where do I have the best chance to start? I do think it's Indianapolis, and I think that's ultimately what won out from the Colts' perspective to beat out the Vikings to bring him back, because they were trying to do it, but I think the starting job, the prospects of it, was what got him to Indianapolis.
I made a proclamation before you came in here, and I'd like to now make it a covenant cleanup. Covenant cleanups are provided by. I said Brett Rippon absolutely will be the backup quarterback to J.J. McCarthy here. Probably went a little far with the absolutely. I mean, he started 6 games. He's played 10.
Yep.
I mean, you know, we talk to a lot of the same people, man, and we know that, let's just say some of the right people happen to be very, very excited about the improvement he's made under the cover of darkness. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I think people are excited about the progress there, but I also would expect that they may want a veteran to be in the room just in case they had to go out and win a few games or J.J. McCarthy's not ready or whatever happens. I do think there's going to be a veteran insurance policy of some type. Rippon has been in the system long enough that will help him, no doubt. I mean, I think there is value in that. There's value in being in their building, in their meetings, talking with their coaches about the way they want things done. All of that is beneficial. I would expect that they may still want to go get another veteran. I think that has been the intention the entire time. It's why they were trying to get Daniel Jones back. So what that looks like at this point, we will see. But, I would expect there'll be at least one more name coming in here.
Okay, so there are layers. So baseline, Daniel Jones, no longer in the covenant,
Yep.
goes to Indianapolis to compete for a starting job. the belief then would be Daniel Jones deduced, because it's nice having cash around here. Nice having a little walking around money.
Yeah.
They could have beat that 14.5 if they needed to beat that 14.5. So
throw void years in there if you have to, whatever.
Sure. Is the deduction, there's not a competition here. It's one man's job, so therefore I'm going to go compete somewhere where I have a chance to play.
I think that had to be part of the calculus where you're saying, where do I have a better chance to go out and play frequently enough and play well enough that I can get myself a longer-term deal in 2026? He would be better set up in terms of the supporting cast and the knowledge of the offense and what the Vikings do. He'd be better off in Minnesota that way. But I think he had to have deduced, okay, if I'm here, I'm competing with J.J. McCarthy, who they drafted and who they are still very high on, who should be ready to compete in the offseason and in training camp. So if I'm looking at these two things side by side, I'm saying the Colts is a better opportunity for me to play well enough or play frequently enough to get a bigger deal. I think that's absolutely part of the math. And I think it is another reminder of how they feel about J.J. McCarthy, because I wrote about it today. They played the Darnold thing very similarly to what they did with Cousins last year, where they said publicly, we want him back, which I think was true. And they did try to make a deal. But
I don't buy the 1 in 25, do you?
Not necessarily, no. But I think, you whatever it is, you're kind of talking in that range of, we have a line of how far we're willing to go. We like you, but this is always going to be tempered by the fact that we have a young quarterback who is plan A for the long term. It was why they wouldn't go as far as Cousins wanted. And it's why Darnold said, okay, I have a better opportunity somewhere else, because you can only start one of these guys. So this is the tricky thing about it when you have guys like Jones and Darnold who are 27 years old, still in the middle of their careers, wanting to maximize their own opportunities. It's not an easy handoff to the 22-year-old that you're trying to get ready to play. It's not, I don't know that it's easy when it's a legend like the Packers have done it, but it is a little cleaner in the sense that, okay, this guy's at the end of his career and we know that.
Yeah.
This is a little more complicated from the perspective of these quarterbacks that are saying no, are doing it because they know J.J. McCarthy is the plan, and it's not going to mean good things for their career prospects over the long term.
Lastly, on Daniel Jones to Indianapolis, and yours truly was very, very, very much hoping somehow he would stay here to be the backup to J.J. McCarthy, but that's all good. Aaron Rodgers does not enter the conversation within the love covenant when it comes to a potential backup to J.J. McCarthy. So if you disagree with that and you think that forget the cash, the sense-making part of it, the common sense of it's just ridiculous. So therefore, with Mullins following Udinsky to Jacksonville, that now, if you want a veteran backup, I mean, you may have to wait for some things to happen, but like Gardner Minshew, Drew Lock, Jameis Winston, Carson Wentz, or
oh my God, Kirk O'Chill,
Cousins, a million.
You would have to wait for that to get done. Barrero and I were talking about this a little bit yesterday too, and as I mentioned, I merely posited that he still is friendly with Kevin O'Connell. He knows the system, and you could get him for $1 million. I put this out on Twitter like 2 months ago, and I just got killed for it.
Left here on great terms.
Yeah, he
actually is somebody I would believe would be. It's like the overplayed. Well, yeah, but now you got Favre to raise Rodgers.
Yeah,
now you got so and so to raise. No, I actually think Kirk would be intentional with that if he accepted. I'm here. I liked it here. And I recognize my lot in life and the team's lot in life. I actually would believe that with him.
I think that would be the key is, does he see himself at this point of, hey, this is probably what it's going to be for me here on out. Mm-hmm. It's not going to be anymore where I'm anybody's plan A. Because it's not, it can't be. It's not going to be that for him again, because he's going to be 37. He had the Achilles. He lost his job last year. It's not going to exist for him in the way that he would hope anymore. Mm-hmm. So if you're going to continue to play for however long he wants to do it, you figure, okay, where can I go that makes sense? I think Cleveland still could be an option if he feels like he wants to compete. He knows Kevin Stefanski, of course, but if he were to say, okay, it's going to be the backup thing, like maybe I'm a spot starter, I can mentor, this does make some sense. I think there's a lot of things, whether it's I know the area, I know the team, I know the building, I know the coaches, I know the offense. I think a lot of those things would make sense if everybody can agree to the roles. That's a lot of the thing here is if everybody is clear about what you are and what the priority is, I do wonder if they would, because that's frankly what they wanted to do in 2024 was bring him back and kind of make him the guy that you hand things over to the young quarterback eventually.
Right.
Now that's not the case because his leverage doesn't exist to make that happen. Mm-hmm. He can't really raise a fuss about it anymore.
Think about it.
It's I don't think it's impossible.
Tuesdays, Mendota Heights, Cousins family put J.J. McCarthy in there, matching pajamas and to learn skinny posts.
There you go.
Love that one.
I have
Cooper, Turner, and JJ.
Yeah.
I'm glad you nailed it. It is all about accepting roles. I don't believe he's ready to do that. The idea, if he's not able to be a starter, the way that he's spoken over the course of time, I think Kirk would almost be happier just potentially leaving the league because he's not chasing dollars. I think he legitimately chases wins. The way he was talking after the season about his arm and his elbow and how that led to the downturn in his play, everything he said sounded to me like a guy that I'm going to be ready again. The Achilles is going to be fine. I need that juice in 2025, and I think I'm ready. I love the idea of him going to Cleveland because he's not competing in 2025. They just did the bid Kenny Pickett for Dorian Thompson-Robinson, I think. And so they have Kenny Pickett, but Deshaun Watson's not going to play, right? So he's going to show up there. Stefanski can give him $1 million, plays in an offense and a scheme with a guy he's pretty damn familiar with.
Makes sense.
He can get out there and Atlanta's going to give him that bag. He doesn't have to worry about the idea of, am I competing with JJ? And then after 2025, if I do want to continue playing, well, I ended up only getting most of the preseason reps, and JJ ultimately took over. I honestly, and this isn't about dragging Kirk or being down on Kirk, I think he's gonna find himself in a spot like Cleveland, if anything. And in the end, I don't see him. Not that he's a bad person. I can't see him at this stage accepting that role where, I am now just going to be the baton tosser to J.J. McCarthy. I can't see that.
Fair.
Oh, my God. Kirk chill.
So the guard, Will Fries.
Yeah.
Let's begin here. Do you think the securing of former teammate and center Ryan Kelly helped to get Will Fries here?
I don't think it hurt. I mean, because there was a lot of competition for Will Fries. I mean, there were a lot of teams interested in him around the league.
Must have been with the cash they paid.
Yeah. And I was on the radio in Seattle yesterday, too. And the Seahawks were certainly in the mix for him. And I think there were several others as well.
There were like 5 or 6 teams, man. You're right. Wow.
Yeah. So I think
Placey's winning races now.
Yeah, he is. And I when you come in and say, I'm playing with my former center, and I've got Brian O'Neill on the other side. That's a pretty attractive thing. So, I'm sure it did not hurt. What that means for Garrett Bradbury, I'm curious to see. I think there's still a lot of questions about where that will go. I don't know.
They have to trade him, right?
Well, I would think
they would want to.
I would think that would be a good option. I think teams would say, well, if you're going to cut him, what are we going to give up for him in a trade? I had a couple conversations about that last night. People kind of keeping an eye on that, but it's probably not impossible. I mean, I don't think he's a guard. He has played guard. I don't know that you're going to make him that in this offense just because he's not as big, probably as what you want. Certainly not as big as Blake Brandel.
Right.
But if they were to say we want to keep him around in some capacity, I mean, you already have him on the cap. You'd save like $3.5 million by cutting him. So I think that makes some sense. I think a trade would make some sense, but it's not completely prohibitive to say let's hang on to him for now, or you kind of split the difference and say he's staying for now until we get what we want, and he's a trade chip. I mean, they've done this before. Ezra Cleveland, Dalton Reisner, that sort of thing. Having a lineman that has started in the NFL on your roster that you can trade is not a bad asset to retain, especially if you need draft picks, which they do.
Ryan Grigson is Senior Vice President of Player Personnel for the Minnesota Vikings. He was the 4-year general manager for the Indianapolis Colts.
Yep.
and he started in 2016. I believe Ryan Kelly was his very first draft pick.
Yes.
His very first rounder. So familiarity at times can breed contempt, but it also, if you look back at Kelly's career.
Well, that was his last year, right? He was GM from 2012 to 2016.
Oh, was that it?
I think that's right.
Okay,
I think
bad.
Andrew Luck actually may have been
Thank
his
you.
first pick.
Right. But he was picked by Grigson,
Correct.
so there's familiarity there. Kelly, I think, has played all the games maybe 2 times in his career, 2 or 3 times. Last year, it got a little dicey. You know, they, from what I understand, they sought a contract extension, got shut down. Then they drafted a center in the 4th round, supposedly they like. Then Kelly got hurt, I believe a neck, came back, left in the game. He came back against the Titans with a calf. Came back 3 games later, like a lingering knee bit, required a cleanup, and then he was done for the year.
Yeah.
So what do you think of all that?
Yeah, there's some of that with him, and Will Fries had an injury last year as well. It was a tibia fracture.
Played 4 games.
Yep. So they've had some of that, and I think you've got that a little bit with a lot of these free agents that they've signed, which is not unusual for them. They have done this where they've bet a little bit on injury risks. Byron Murphy came in here as a bit of an injury risk. He come off a back injury, I think, in Arizona, and there was all of this question about can we keep him healthy? I mean, I think a lot of teams were asking that. That probably depressed the market. The Vikings certainly believe they have an advantage with their medical staff, that they can keep guys on the field and keep them healthier, keep them generally performing better than a lot of teams do because of Tyler Williams and that staff. So I do think at times it shows up at this time of year where they say, you know what, we can get this guy at a little bit of a discount because teams are worried about the injuries. If we say we're not as worried about that, we can make this work. Sometimes it can pay off. Sometimes it's Marcus Davenport. So sometimes it blows up in your face. But I would think with a tibia fracture like Fries or some of these things, if it's a broken bone, it's not as much of a worry of it happening the same way again, probably. So I do think that factors into their way of doing things this time of year to an extent.
Ben Goessling, Star Tribune, StarTribune.com, at Ben Goessling via X. And there's a newsletter. There's a home studio. We have YouTube podcasting. I mean, Ben's, he's SCTVs, MTVs worldwide these days, at Ben Goessling via Twitter. Now, just to land the plane here, with the right to change this opinion, just play with your discernment. Walter Rouse, 2nd-year offensive lineman, Oklahoma.
Yeah.
Conversion to guard. If it's a 0 to a 10, where would you put it now?
I would to start. Is that what you're asking?
Okay. To play. I'm going to say play because I with the right to change my opinion too. I know things didn't necessarily go extremely well for Blake Brandel at the end of the season.
Yes.
And he led the team in penalties.
Yep.
Okay. But I'm a big fan of somebody being charged to do something and then completing it the next time supposed to be better.
Yeah.
So, and he's also, from a size standpoint, he's big.
Yes.
So if Brandel, comes into OTAs, minicamp, training camp, as a starting guard with Fries, with Kelly,
right,
I'm cool with that.
Yeah.
So Rouse moving to guard.
Yeah, I think that's a possibility. I think they've talked about that. I think they like that as an option. The other question I have with Rouse and just the offensive line in general is if Darisaw is still coming off that ACL, what is the timetable for him? I think it's possible he's ready to go training camp wise and kind of the beginning of the season, but I would assume they will want to be cautious with him and take things slow so that they're not at any risk of that happening again or any kind of a setback. So is Rouse going to be a guy from that perspective that plays some of that tackle, at least temporarily, while Darisaw is getting better? And do you want him as a swing tackle? I mean, I think there are different options with him. The versatility there probably helps him in that regard.
Juergens backs up Kelly.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, they like Juergens a lot.
Quessenberry?
Well,
Quessenberry, I mean,
he's a free agent, isn't he?
Yeah, people may be like, okay, well, we're happy for Quessenberry.
Yeah.
My man's, he's not going to make you forget Walter Jones.
No.
But he's jumped into some tough spots.
Yeah, they like him as a
handled it. And yes, he handles. It's like that Atlanta game, the Dobbs experiment.
Yeah.
Darisaw scratched 2 hours before the game.
Right.
After practicing a majority of the week. And Quessenberry had to jump in there. And about 90% of it, he held up beautifully. Then big people get tired.
Yep.
So I just like having Quessenberry on the team, man. I think he's good.
There is a value in the guy that you can throw in a pinch, because getting through a season with 5 offensive linemen healthy is generally not something you want to count on all the time. Having a guy that can come in and make a spot start, kind of like a deep bullpen, I think is a valuable thing. So whether it's Quessenberry or somebody else, I think there's a benefit to having that type of a player on the roster.
The answer was 4.5. You looked at your phone 4.5 times, either while I was talking, once when Norda was talking, and 2.5 times when you were talking.
Yeah.
Is something percolating?
Just checking if there are things percolating. Still just responding to some texts. I think
there's something new that's happening, by the way, and maybe I should look more closely at your tweets. I don't believe you've done it. It's the Nationals, it's the Schefters and the Rappaports and maybe .com Tom. They're filing these reports and breaking news or confirming breaking news, and then it's like, and the deal was consummated by Eric Nordquist of Institute for Athletes.
Brought to you by...
Thank you. That's new. Nobody ever used to do that.
Hey, at least we're saying the quiet part out loud of where all this stuff comes from.
That's got to be the new hook, right?
Advertising.
I'll give this to you first, but you got to drop my handle on it.
Yep.
Oh,
wow.
wow.
10 million followers on there. Yeah, I'll put your name on it, and then everybody sees you get the credit for it.
I'm getting it.
Yeah, that is part of it. And then the other thing is, I've had this PSA a couple times to people this week already. When the initial numbers come out, that is a sticker price.
Yeah,
that is
correct.
Every incentive realized, every base escalator hit. This is what it could be worth.
Yeah.
Wait until the official numbers come out before you freak out about the price, because they're always less than what gets released early.
If I'm a Green Bay Packers fan, I got sticker shock on Aaron Banks. I got sticker shock right now. So I probably need to see what that real money looks like.
Yep.
You're late. Another segment with Ben Goessling, beat writer for the Star Tribune, covers the Minnesota Vikings. We have so much more into which we'll dive. After Ben leaves, Nordo and I are going to handle it, and we'll do all of that when we return. Jonathan Allen, defensive tackle, Washington Commanders, but came into the league, I believe, in 2017. So O'Connell was there, offensive coordinating for Dwayne Haskins, God rest his soul, and the rest of Washington when Allen was there. Blake Barrett's local representation, Institute for Athletes. Jonathan Allen, it was a pectoral last year, and I think he missed half the season and the playoff games. But the way I framed it up in the beginning when we were being all herky-jerky and celebratory and just like being kids was he legitimately has a chance to be a defensive lineman who rushes the passer or has more sacks or is more of a menacing presence than from that standpoint than any defensive lineman since Tom Johnson.
Yeah.
So I think we got to go back to Tom Johnson, like 6.5 sacks, right?
Yes.
What do you think?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's been a position that they have not had that type of a presence on an every down basis for a long time. And the fact that we're talking about Tom Johnson, a rotational player who played very well in what they asked him to do, but signed a couple of different contracts. He was not like a fixture in the defense, in other words. The fact that he is the guy that's kind of been the standard bearer in terms of interior pass rush tells you what it has been like over the last really probably decade or so. I guess there was the 1 year with Sheldon Richardson in 2018 when they gave Kirk the big contract and they threw Richardson on as like the cherry on top of the ice cream sundae. And he had, I think, an 8-sack season that year. But there has not been that kind of a steady presence really probably since Kevin Williams. Right. I mean, Sharif Floyd had a minute.
He had a chance.
And they looked at Aaron Donald in the draft in 14. They took Anthony Barr. It was a year after Sharif Floyd, so timing did not help them there. But in any case, they have not had that type of a player in a long time that could provide that kind of disruptive presence. I remember Mike Zimmer always talking about that because he'd had Geno Atkins in Cincinnati, how much that meant to that defense, getting that type of pass rush up the middle.
And DeMonte Pecco.
Yeah. They had a lot of that because the thing there was you'd have all the double A gap stuff, and then how do we deal with these guys and then the blitzers that are coming on either side of the center too. So it does make a difference, and I think having that type of a presence in the middle of the line changes a lot of things.
All of this can be done. I mean, all of this is possible.
Yep.
Because of some tough decisions like releasing Dalvin Cook off a good season, some other things.
Sure.
With Kwesi Adofo-Mensah, I'm not going to go through the analogy, the long form analogy of it, but I mean, he's a stock guy by trade. If you look at free agency as the New York Stock Exchange and Saturday rounds 4, 5, and 6 as the NASDAQ, okay, you got to hit on rounds 1, 2, and 3, and they have to do a better job with it, with all due respect.
Yep.
And cool. I mean, Roseman, Veach, everybody, Snead, they're hitting on Saturday picks too. That has to happen.
Yep.
But if free agency is your New York Stock Exchange and you happen to be a really good trader with it, well, then just mash on it. You can identify things that way, while the lifeblood of the team still has to be fortified via the draft. J.J. McCarthy will be the starting quarterback. Dallas Turner has to be better, and so on and so on.
Yeah.
So with that said, all of this is possible when you have a quarterback on a rookie deal.
No doubt.
Right?
Yep.
So that's why all of this is transpiring.
Yes, and this is why they went the way that they went. There was certainly intrigue on this idea of rookie quarterback contract as cheat code as far back as 2022, 2023, when Kevin O'Connell, Kwesi Adofo-Mensah start making plans. Organizationally, they were very interested in, let's get to a point where we aren't paying a quarterback this kind of money unless he's top of the top and he's worth it. So I think this has been in the works for a while, and you're now seeing what it looks like when they have that type of an option at quarterback. And they're still going to, if they sign somebody, it still won't be very expensive. They will have the cheapest quarterback bill that they've had probably in almost a decade. I wrote about this for my newsletter on Friday.
Wow.
The Teddy Bridgewater injury, if we go all the way back to that, that changed everything in the organization, because that meant your years of cheap quarterback play were already done. They make the first round pick trade for Sam Bradford. They pay Sam Bradford. Sam Bradford obviously gets hurt, and then they go sign Kirk Cousins after the Case Keenum year. And they've had expensive quarterbacks really since that happened, since Bridgewater got hurt August 30th, 2016. So they are finally back to this point of having the cheap quarterback for a while. And if he succeeds, I mean, you see it this week. Sam Darnold's deal, I think, is like 18th in the league. So the going rate for quarterbacks at this point is $35 million or so more, at least, than what they're paying J.J. McCarthy. If they can just get him to be above average, that is a massive surplus. And you can use all that money to say, let's build an elite team around him. And we've seen a lot of teams use this to go deep in the playoffs or go to the Super Bowl in the last 10 years in the NFC. So there is certainly a desire to do this because you've seen it work in the past. 3
off seasons into it for Kwesi Adofo-Mensah and his staff. And that would include right-hand men, Demetrius Washington, Rob Brzezinski, Ryan Grigson, and the rest of the cats. If I were to tell you, I wouldn't be surprised if Kwesi Adofo-Mensah's strength, not only is this time of the year, but it's those calls with the agents. And it's the, hey, you know what? Just because Banks got this doesn't mean I'm doing this. Just because, now maybe on the other side, it could be, all right, I don't know why Carlton Davis, sticker price-wise, got more than DJ Reed. I got no idea. That's not my problem. But then if it's like, okay, well, if Byron doesn't get this, you can believe me or not, Quace, he's out.
Yeah.
And then having the discernment to be like, bet, I got you on that.
Yep.
We're going to give him the 23 or the 22 each year.
Yeah, agreed.
Or whatever it is.
I think he has, and I have to think that being in the world he was in allows you to have a low pulse at the poker table, so to speak. He's not getting spooked by, what if we lose this guy? What's the opportunity cost, to use an economic term, of losing this guy? It's like, well, it's not enough that I need to flinch and give him more money just to keep him here and say, what are we going to do without him? So I think a lot of what they've done, certainly what they've done at quarterback, is saying, yeah, we'll be okay. We're gonna have a threshold and we're gonna stick to it. And we're not going to necessarily go above that if we're not comfortable. But if it's something we know we have to have, then we'll make sure we get it done and pay to have that happen. But yes, I think being able to read the table, know what his hand is, know what he wants to spend. All of those things from his trading background have helped him here in free agency. We'll see what this year's haul does on the field, but certainly last year, they could not have gotten much more out of that group. And the reason they were a 14-win team had a lot to do with the fact that they hit so many home runs in free agency. So, yes, I do think this has been the part of the job where he's been at the best. And the Moneyball thing, too. Moneyball, part of it in baseball was saying, let's take college players over high school players, because we've seen college players produce in a setting that's more like the major leagues. You can play the same idea here with free agency, especially if you can find decent deals, and saying, we've already seen these guys produce in the NFL. We know what their comparables are because we have NFL data, we have NFL film to go off of rather than trying to project from college. So I do think there's a little bit of a preference, not entirely because you need the draft to hit because you need cheap labor, but there is something with free agents that if you can be effective, you are dealing from a pool of players that you have at least been able to evaluate and analyze on an apples-to-apples level.
Yeah.
So earlier in the show, we asked for talkbacks with the free iHeartRadio app. Probably some time to kick off the 11 a.m. hour to play some of those. But I will tell you this, other than some excitement and a couple of nitpicking regarding the pickups so far, by and large, 80% of the talkbacks have asked about this particular player. Are the Vikings done? Would they take a peek at this guy?
Robert from Apple Valley. How about we end it with Cooper Kupp as our slot receiver once he's released from the Rams? I believe we got enough money. Let's go, Skull!
So after adding Devontae Adams to the Rams, and if they're unable to find a trade partner, Cooper Kupp's going to be released, and he's going to be similar to Jonathan Allen. You're not picking up dead cap. There's no other expense other than finding a deal. And Cooper Kupp, connection to Kevin O'Connell, a guy that still believes he can be high-end, who has been very high-end.
Yes, Dane.
And potentially a prove-it deal, wide receiver 3, Cooper Kupp. What do you think, Ben?
I think it's very possible. There are big Cooper Kupp fans on that coaching staff. Kevin O'Connell, Wes Phillips is a big Cooper Kupp fan. In terms of, you hear him talk all the time still about Cooper Kupp as a run blocker, Cooper Kupp as a guy who would bring ideas to the offense. The whole, like, when Justin Jefferson put the triple move on Stephon Gilmore and cooked him in that game, in the comeback game in 2022.
It was a Kupp play.
That was a Kupp and Stafford play that they basically drew up during a COVID workout.
Wow.
That they brought to Minnesota because they brought it to Phillips and O'Connell and Sean McVay, and it lived on and kind of morphed to that. Yes.
The first time Justin and Cooper met each other, they were caught on NFL films with Justin being like, paraphrasing, dog, I've watched so many of your plays over the last 6 months. It's really a treat to meet you.
Yes, it would make a lot of sense for Cooper Kupp to be here. Again, it's a role thing, but they need a wide receiver 3.
Are you kidding me with
Jordan
this?
Addison with a possible suspension at the beginning of the year. We still have to wonder about that. I think if the price is right, yes, I think that makes a lot of sense. I think there'd be a lot of interest.
Oh, you're playing so fast right now. That's fantastic. So thank you very much for stopping by. I know you're busy. You and the Star Tribune crew, the staff, fantastic work. We will follow you at Ben Goessling via the X machine, and have a beautiful day. Okay.
You too. Thank you.
Ben Goessling, Star Tribune, StarTribune.com. We are into the second half of the 9 to noon radio show with the free agent frenzy continuing. It has slowed down just a little bit, though, not only here, but with teams around the National Football League. News in order around the corner, talkbacks and free agency conversation shortly after 11. Replay Finchy about 11:20. And then in the final segment, put a wrap on the show. You're listening to 9 to noon at FM 100.3 KFAN.
Welcome back. News to Nord brought to you by The Casino at Canterbury Park, CanterburyPark.com. Feeling the felt. Poker, blackjack, and table games all year round. Live racing later this spring. CanterburyPark.com, the spot to start. Minnesota Wild, you're going to get to hear them on these airwaves. A small deviation. We got to talk about hockey a little bit. We are the state of hockey. Go Spuds, go East Grand Forks, and go Minnesota Wild, who have struggled putting the puck in the net in recent times. A 3-1 loss on Sunday, a couple of goals from Crosby. But they have this homestand in front of them as March unfurls. Just defending your home ice, and you will comfortably find yourself in the postseason. Well, starting tonight, a chance to do it. Colorado Avalanche in town. It's a 7 p.m. puck drop, 6:45-ish pregame, a Fallness Festival, if you will, right here on your home for Wild Hockey, The Fan. And after that, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 more at home before they dip down to Dallas, try to figure out how to beat the Stars. Then they come back for 3 more. So again, a super home-heavy March. You just got to win at the place that you've had great difficulty winning, and everything's going to be all good. So looking forward to the Minnesota Wild and the Avalanche this evening. NFL free agency, we've been talking about it throughout the show, but once again, giving you a rundown. While Sam Darnold left the nest, Cam Bynum to the Colts, Patrick Jones to the Panthers, Nick Mullins and Johnny Munt to the Jaguars. Well, you were getting up early this morning, and you were thinking to yourself, okay, I kind of like Isaiah Rodgers, this corner out of Philly. He's intriguing, and the money's not bad, so hopefully he pans out. You get Byron Murphy in the 11th hour last night. That's kind of cool. Ryan Kelly, kind of confused with what's going on there at center with Garrett Bradbury. Just one more year left on his deal. But then you checked social media, and X was actually working today. And you saw early on, Skull Bama. If you were Blake Barrett's putting that out on X last night, Jonathan Allen, a 3-year, $60 million deal. Defensive tackle, Washington Commanders. He was released. Now he's a Viking.
Skull Tide.
Will Fries, 5 years, $88 million. He joins from the Indianapolis Colts. And then Javon Hargrave. So this is not official yet, because Javon Hargrave, he's 32 years old, and so still waiting to hear the terms of the deal. But he's going to be released by the 49ers tomorrow when the league year officially opens, and he will be joining the Minnesota Vikings. Excited to see what the term on that is. So the Vikings very active in free agency. News breaking during, and big thanks to Ben Goessling, Star Tribune, for being in studio as busy as he has been and will continue to be throughout this process.
So cool.
But news breaking into the Ben Goessling bit that Daniel Jones is going to be joining the Indianapolis Colts, a 1-year, $14 million deal. Not that the Vikings couldn't have outbid them per chance, but it sounds like in some ways, maybe if you're Daniel Jones thinking your way through it, might have a better chance of being QB1 in Indy than maybe here in Minnesota. The fact that he was here, he knows how the team feels about J.J. McCarthy. That leaves kind of a void in that backup quarterback spot. But that's where the Vikings sit at this stage of the free agency equation.
If you believe cornerback Carlton Davis had opportunities with better teams than the New England Patriots, but declined because he wanted to make the most money he could get at this stage of his career, and I happen to believe that. If you believe former Los Angeles Rams tough guy, edge guy, and defensive end, Michael Hoyt, caught everybody off guard by going on the first day of legal tampering, and took more wherever he went than maybe some better teams could have offered, which I do believe. That's not the case with Daniel Jones. Is the money situation, from what I understand, it matters he's kind of in the same situation as Darnold, which was a 1 in 10.
Right.
So he got 4 more, but guess what? The cap went up. Yeah. So it's the same deal that Sam Darnold got. But it's not born of how much can I get as quickly as I can.
Yeah, I don't think it was just about higher dollars.
It truly is born of a legitimate opportunity to play for a team that has some nice skill players.
And if you're the Colts right now and the skill players, how down are you in some respects? Like you're thinking, okay, changing of the guard, literally and figuratively, you're seeing changes at O-line.
Yeah.
You've wanted to will Anthony Richardson into a spot of greatness, and he's had so many solid moments, but he also can't stay on the field, and every time he runs, you have to hold your breath because he might be out for 6 weeks with some sort of shoulder bit. Mm-hmm. And so now you're going in, and you're pumped about, you probably have some respect for Shane Steichen, and you like maybe some things that he's done with this team, but you're going into camp crossing your fingers that Anthony Richardson will be healthy, and the alternative option then becomes Daniel Jones. It's got to be frustrating for Colts fans. But if you are a Vikings fan, let me hit you with this. I know this is news to ignore, but really NFL's dominating the thing. And
I have a covenant cleanup. I said something wrong. Okay,
covenant cleanup provided by
Michael Hoyt. Last name looks like Hecht. Okay, his name's Michael Hoyt. Played for the LA Rams. I said it in reverse fashion. Now, Hoyt is somebody that I've mentioned on this radio show as a coveted free agent by yours truly, which could or could not mean that it was a coveted free agent by somebody within TCOPC. Okay, my man's incredibly strong. And he played in the Ivy League, and he's very, very versatile. We're not putting him in the Hall of Fame. He just was untapped talent for a Rams team that got caught behind some of these talented kids.
Yeah.
Became a free agent. Now, Hoyt, from what I understand, had offers for more money, but he took a deal with the Buffalo Bills. I think it's the Bills. The Bills?
It is the Bills.
Okay. Because he thinks he's sitting on a legitimate opportunity to go to the Super Bowl and play for a defense that just fits what he does. So most people are like, Michael Hoyt, we're happy for you. I can't even say his last name because it looks like Hecht. But it's Daniel Jones going to Indianapolis bugs me a little bit because I kind of wanted him back. I didn't think he'd be here without Kevin O'Connell. They put a lot of time into it, but hey, that's how the business works. Other side of the business, Hoyt would have been a fantastic addition to this team. But I'm not even saying they chased him, but I'm not saying they didn't chase him.
Right. I'm
saying he wanted to play for the Buffalo Bills, man. And so he goes from Los Angeles to Buffalo. There's a lot of that happening right now, you know?
Yeah, and he gets 2 of those 3 years guaranteed. But certainly, I mean, if you're picking those teams, and
nice
Carlton Davis is a great example.
Yeah.
Not that the Vikings, I mean, it's weird as Vikings fans to say this, but it is true. The Vikings have a better path to the Super Bowl than the New England Patriots do in 2025. If everyone stays healthy and does their thing, Vikings are a better football team. And if Carlton Davis, for instance, maybe had that choice and the Vikings are like, well, you're going to be our starting outside guy, but I'm going to give you 15 and change. Mm-hmm. And the Patriots come over the top with 20 apiece and he chooses that would be the opposite of what a Hoyt did.
Yes.
Where he's like, actually, I'll take less because I might get a ring here.
Yeah.
And actually, if I whoop that ass, I might be able to re-up on a nice deal at some point in the future as well. Bet on myself.
And the reason I did a little work on that.
I like it.
Is you said something earlier about Isaiah Rodgers that I liked. About, hey, this kind of deal and this type of player could be the next Andrew Van Ginkel, where you got a guy who doesn't just outperform a deal, way outperforms a deal.
Yep.
Because Rodgers will get opportunity here that he didn't have in Philadelphia. I would amplify that saying Hoyt would have been that guy, that he would have been that defensive guy who, like Van Ginkel, people are like, whoa, where'd this beefeater come from,
Oh, yeah. I like that. Now, I want to dig back into the backup QB spot for a second. Mm-hmm. So I've kind of framed it up two ways. You can tell me if I'm wrong. The idea that, yes, I do care that the backup quarterback spot matters because if J.J. McCarthy was to get hurt.
You want to run this around to the 12 and replay Finchy then?
Yeah, sure, we can do that.
Let's make it Steve's Appliances marathon segment, courtesy of stevesappliances.com. It's on the north side, no diggity. They have free delivery. They help you with your recycling at no charge, and they also have guaranteed low prices. I went to Steve's Appliances within the last month when we closed on this, and to meet the owners of Steve's Appliances, wow, what an unbelievably kind, wonderful, honest group. So if you need appliances, stevesappliances.com. They provide marathon segments 9 to noon.
So towards the end of the bit last night, Saucy and I are talking, and right at the end, he kind of hits me with, Daniel Jones or how important the backup spot is. Is that the most important spot? I forget exactly how he articulated it, but kind of my idea with the backup QB spot. I definitely would have wanted Daniel Jones to come back as well. I care about the backup quarterback spot from the idea that if J.J. McCarthy is to sustain an injury, or if J.J. McCarthy isn't good, if there are problems that persist in which you're saying second-year guy didn't get a snap in year one, maybe there's some more seasoning required, and you had to make a big spot decision like that in 2025, having Daniel Jones there is sweet.
Yep.
But there's also this element to it, PA, for me, where I'm more focused, how are we getting the line better? What are we doing on the defensive side and those things? Because as far as the future is concerned, Daniel Jones can come in at some point in 2025, let's say he's here, and he can sustain. And this team will win some games with Daniel Jones and potentially even be a factor into the playoffs. And hopefully the playoffs go our way. But in the end, the way this team is constructed with that rookie contract that you were talking about and what's happening now as free agency unfolds, I don't want to flippantly say this, but I suppose I will. I don't care about the backup spot as much as this is J.J. McCarthy's time now. So for this team in the long run to be successful,
well said.
It doesn't matter whether it's Daniel Jones or Minshew. How cool would it be? I want to see famous Jameis. I want to meet Jameis Winston and see him in purple and gold. And that big smile on the sideline every week.
He might drive KO crazy.
That might be a factor. But while he's on the sideline with that big smile, he's smiling because J.J. McCarthy's on the field handling business.
Yeah.
So it's like, I know the backup quarterback spot matters.
Yeah.
But J.J. needs to do his thing. That's how this team was built.
You're right.
And so everything from my mind pushes in that direction. That's where I've been with it.
A couple of years ago when Chains went down, okay, they won 7 games. But it is factual that Kevin O'Connell and this group. Now, in fairness, a major part of the group has left the Covenant and gone to Jacksonville. Grant Udinski. If he didn't have a lot to do and wasn't super well respected,
right,
you don't get 6 offensive coordinator interviews all over the league and then get a job. Now, he got the job in Jacksonville. Liam Cohen is going to call the plays.
Duval.
But Udinski is going to roll into the O'Connell with McVay, Phillips with O'Connell role. And that's a good place to start. So somebody legitimately is out of it, needs to be replaced, and fairly we need to see, or hear how things work. Now, with all that known, it's the work O'Connell and this staff did with Josh Dobbs to get him to throw the ball and get him to throw it right for a patch of games.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Mullins always has had some moxie to him. Nick knows how to get around the football field. I mean, Nick Mullins had 400-yard games as quarterback for Kevin O'Connell's offense. Now, we had some negative turnovers at the ends of games that cost the team games. But when Mullins came into the game after the Jaron Hall experiment or the Josh Dobbs experience, it looked like Kevin O'Connell's offense. Guys are running free. Guys are running open. He's throwing them open.
It looked the part for sure.
Okay. So, but can Mullins start 17 a year, 10 consecutive years? Probably not.
No.
So there's that example. And then the most recent example in the highest end of them all is Sam Darnold.
Yeah.
And the Sam Darnold from the Giants game up to the Jacksonville game was serviceable. He failed mightily in the Jacksonville game, but the team won. He tried to fail mightily the next week against Tennessee with a couple of short hoppers and one that went right to a safety that he dropped. Sam, first and foremost, pushed through it. The 1A were the people helping him, the staff, pushed through it. Then Sam goes lights out. MVP type lights out. Then we get to the Lions game, and we've talked that out 15 different times. Okay, so that was what that was for him, Darnold. But who was crafting it? Who was puppeteering it? Who was constructing it? Off what you said, I completely agree with you that whomever the veteran backup is here, and by the way, if it's Brett Rippon, well, O'Connell and staff get the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah.
10 of 10 times.
Let's go, Brett. I think they sent him off and brought him back like a couple of different times now. So clearly they like something there.
If it's Carson Wentz, if it's famous Jameis, if it's Gardner Minshew, if it's Kirk O'Chains, if it's Brett Rippon, this staff has earned the right to get the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah.
Not 9 of 10, 10 of 10. It's not even a talker until they start to fail and you start to wonder, wow, holy cow, what are we doing here,
How was Softy yesterday?
He was
Are they excited about it?
Yeah.
I wonder how that feels because I think Sam,
they want to be.
They want. Okay.
They're trying
They're
to
looking
be.
for it.
And I think when they put me in last night at 7:00 Central, 5:00 Softy time, I think they thought I was going to come in as complete hype machine and just make Sam Darnold sound like an all-pro. And, they were joking around, and you sent them a couple of highlights they played, which was cool, and we laughed. But then it got to the point in the beginning where I was like, all right, softy, this involves your team starting quarterback and our team losing an accomplished starting quarterback. We need to be serious. What do you need? So then he asked me a question. I talked for 5 minutes straight because that was the only way to do it, is abused animal here, needed to be turned out and just be an animal out there San Francisco way and run around and frolic and be who you are, man, and don't worry about pressure. Okay, now he comes here. All the pressure was on him. He came through, or did he? Because in the most significant, polarizing regular season game in the history of the National Football League, they blocked it fine. They ran the routes fine. The calls were perfect, and he missed 5 touchdowns.
Yeah.
So then he hit me with the Rams game, and I'm like, yeah, he held the ball too long in the Rams game sometimes. Okay, big deal. That Rams L was a group thing. Losing the 1 seed in the NFC, and with all due respect, and I said this while Darnold was under contract here, so we ain't talking out of both sides of our mouth, is mostly a quarterback failure. The not getting the 1 seed against a team that was begging to be beat. Those Lions, they were begging to be beat that day, man, and everybody knew it. Then the Hawkinson thing between the hash marks on 3rd and 17. Most of the onus of that loss goes to one person. And so now it's, do I think he'll do well? How's your offensive line? Okay, they said sketchy. I said, all right, well, here's what's underrated with Sam. Is he didn't have Hawkinson is top 8 tight end in the NFL, let's call him that. Well, he didn't have him for half the year.
Right.
Okay. He also lost his left tackle in October. Well, Sam pushed through that. Sam played around that. That's credit Sam.
Yep.
So I can go 10 of 10 credit. We got this, we got that, we got Jacksonville, we got the Giants game, we got Tennessee. We have everything. We have London, which wasn't great, but they found a way to win. You have to be able to look past what happened at Ford Field, because when the heat was the hottest, he melted.
Yep.
And it's not they melted. Yeah, they melted. He melted.
He did for sure.
Because it was right there in front of us.
It was.
Right there in front of us the entire game, and those kiddies were begging to get beat. So if you can look past that or analyze that, whatever you think about that, then yes. I mean, Sam Darnold's better than Geno Smith, in my opinion, at this stage of his career.
I would agree with that, too.
I'd prefer to have him of the two, even knowing what I know. But for me, really never thinking he was going to be on the team anyway. But like if he was, how do we get past that? It's like, if you compensate him, if I'm a member of the Will family and I pay 10, 15, 20 mil, whatever I pay for Sam Darnold to come back, and he has to play, and he's good, and then you get to a game like that again and he completely fails, well, that's how people get fired.
Right.
Because it's like, yeah, I know I signed off on it, but I own the team. I can make these decisions. Why in the hell did we have him in that spot again? Seriously.
Yeah.
Off what we saw the first time.
Well, and I think, you could, going back to the well when it's gone dry, right? I mean, it was Dobbs when we had the magic, and then that well went dry real quick. Maybe Mile High, right? I mean, that Denver game was wonky. If you remember the fumble he had, was it Kareem Jackson that just absolutely destroyed him?
Oh, and he got hit in the face, and there was no flag.
You go to Mullins. I think there was the weird OT game in Cincinnati where we had Brandon Powell trying to execute a tush push.
Twice.
God bless him.
He did that twice.
Yeah. So, and then Jared Hall for half of a Packers game.
What's the Horn guy's name that I like from Colorado, not JC?
Oh, Jimmy Horn. Is it Jimmy Horn?
Jimmy Horn.
Jimmy
advances on the tush push.
Does he?
In Cincinnati, some Haslam way. Oh, but wait, and then the well running dry bit, and you nailed it. It's okay. So the staff is good at recognizing when the turnip has no more metaphorical blood.
Yeah,
may wait a little long, but they wouldn't be the first to do it. The perfect case in point here. That week of practice Jaron Hall had up to that Packers game, you would have thought he was a cross of Brett Favre and Fran Tarkenton.
Oh, my goodness.
Got yanked before halftime. Got yanked at halftime. I mean, they squeezed that turnip looking for blood, and water came out of it, and they were like, we got a problem here. We have a problem. We got to pull the old BYU rookie.
Well, that's kind of a combo segment. Wolves off tonight. They're at Denver, and it sounds like you're gonna get to hear, if you missed it in the open, you're gonna get to hear from Chris Finch around the corner. PA.
Yeah, that was an enjoyable interview because the team has won 5 consecutive. Minds need a break from everything that's transpiring right now. Wild, by the way, playing the Avalanche this evening. It's a 7:00 game, I believe.
It is,
and it's here, and it's one of those 10 of the next 11 are at home. They have something like that. So you got to make hay when the getting is good at the old XL Energy Center, where Nordo and I will be on Thursday for Vox in the Box. Once again, Steve's Appliances, stevesappliances.com. Thank you very much for the marathon segment that came out of nowhere. Excellent work by Nordo constructing it and leading it. And I'm Paul Allen. We'll replay Finchy. Then we have a lot of time to listen to some talkbacks and do a Covenant catch-up on free agency when 9 to noon continues on your favorite radio station, KFAN.